have been seeing a lot of different grief reactions recently in the public and in private. And I want to talk about that today on the Cultivating Calmness podcast. I'm Kaela Vance. Thank you for joining me today. So, as we're all aware, over the last several weeks, we have all been witnessing and experiencing how people react to loss and death. And, we have seen, I think, the spectrum out in public, for the world to see. We're seeing this in podcasters, newscasters, personal friends. We're seeing this from strangers. We're seeing this from enemies. We're seeing this from, every place you can possibly imagine. We're seeing grief reactions. And within that, we're also seeing judgment. We're seeing judgment from all sides on how people should and should not feel, how people should and should not react to the loss of a loved one, a friend, a stranger, etc., fill in the blank. Sometimes grief can bring people together, and sometimes grief can push people apart. I know I have witnessed this personally. I've witnessed this professionally. I have witnessed this on a global scale for not only recent events, but also way past events. We recently had the anniversary of September 11th. For anybody who was alive during that time, I was in 8th grade. We saw what happened to our world and the way things changed. My husband was in college, and he shares about his experience and how things changed, not only from like day to day, but then, comparing one year to the next year in college. I was in 8th grade, so like September 11th and the things that happened, a lot of what happened is just how life has been since then. But there was a life before that. There was a life that, was experienced in a different way. So grief and shock and horror can change people, is what I'm saying. But I really wanted to focus on just the types of reactions we have when we're grieving. And, I'm not here to say that like how you're grieving is right or wrong. We obviously have extremes in one way or the other, and we want to be careful of those extremes as well. And, I want you to be free to cry, be angry, be numb, be happy, be frustrated, be any of the emotions. Like, it's okay to feel all of those things. It's okay to feel them all at once. That's actually pretty normal. To have ups and downs, to have good days and bad days, to have days where you think I can get through it and they're going to be okay, and other days where you just feel like I can't get out of bed. The hope is that when we're grieving and we're experiencing a loss, that the intensity of those emotions can decrease over time, that you can get through, we say like your first year is the hardest, right? But that's not saying that, okay, it's been a year, you're supposed to be over it now. Not true at all. If you watch some of my previous podcasts, right? It's been 30 years for me. And there are moments where I can have a conversation about something, about the same thing that I did my podcast episode on. And we can talk just fine. But then I sat down and I recorded that podcast, and it was like all the stuff comes out because you're just in a different moment, your different mindset. Things can hit differently depending on where you are, what you're doing, and how you're feeling that day, or just like the circumstances. So, I just want you to be wary and cautious of the judgment that you place on other people when they are grieving, and seeing the reactions that people are having, whether it's personal and private or whether it's out there in the world for the world to see. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to want to find answers. It's okay to not want answers. It's okay to, believe it and rely and lean on your faith to carry you through. It's okay to pray. It's okay to not pray. It's okay to, need help and want help and seek help. And it's okay to say you don't want any help. we also want to find that balance. So for people who are friends or family and are like looking on and witnessing somebody grieving, how do we support them? How do we help them through those difficult times? How do we talk to them about that anger? Are they having a good outlet for that? Are they utilizing that in a way that is helpful? As a therapist, it's not my job to say that you're wrong with how you're grieving. No. But it is my job to help you through that, whatever that is, whatever you need to get from that. And that's not to say that I always know what's right or best for you. That's why it's a conversation. That's why it's learning from you. It's seeing, how is this helping you? And maybe whatever it is you're going through is helping. Now, if we're going to those extremes, right? Anger, am I destroying things? Am I literally setting my life on fire? Am I, isolating and losing weight and, not showering and not taking care of myself and not taking care of my needs and my home and all these things, right? Those are some of those extremes that we want to be careful of. Are you allowed to feel those things? Yes, absolutely. But there are ways that those things can be made to feel better. Sitting in that and being like, that's the only thing you're feeling and it's the only thing you're going through is not going to help you. So like, by all means, be sad. You don't have to take a shower every day. But let's get you out of your bed. Let's get you to the couch. Let's get you outside for a walk. Let's get you over to my house and we can sit on the couch there and not talk. Being around people, not isolating, talking about things. Those are the things that we want to do. We want to see, how can we help these people? How can we help them? Not judge them. So having some of that compassion, having some of that empathy with, understanding like, hey, maybe this is just how they're grieving. And does it have to be a bad thing? Could we have a mix of both? Can we be happy and sad? Can we be angry and want to, angry and want to find answers and rely on our faith and know that, you say like, this is how it was meant to be, or the person's in a better place. And, those kind of phrases that people tend to use. Both of those things can be true at the same time. You can want to know and understand why somebody died. And you can also say, obviously my faith would say that this is how it was supposed to be, that this was their time. And even though I don't like it, because I miss them, I am learning to accept that, but that also makes me sad, or that also makes me angry. And yeah, maybe it was their time, but I want to know why. And I want to know how this happened. Because, maybe somebody you feel needs to be punished for something, or maybe you just need an outlet to say that this is how you're going to heal. So whether that's like a cancer diagnosis, for example, and you want to know like where that came from, versus, sometimes you get the answers like, that just happens to some people. Some people want a little more than that. I had a recent experience recently with a family member that was in the hospital, and, they were suggesting treatments, and it was like, well, we can remove this organ or this part of the organ, or, we could do this transfusion, or we could do, and my brain went to, okay, but did we find out what the problem was first? Do we know what was causing the problem, or are we just going straight to like, let's do surgery? I was not content with that. I wanted answers, and honestly, I still don't have any answers to what that family member was going through. And that makes me angry. It makes me angry with our health system. That's a whole other topic of discussion. So we can talk about that some other time. But the fact of the matter is that you can have compassion and empathy and sadness and anger, frustration, happiness, all around the same loss. And so us sitting back, maybe not experiencing the loss somebody is experiencing, it's not our place to judge, but to maybe say to ourselves, what can I do about it? What can I do to help this person, if anything? It could be a note. It could be a phone call. It could be a helping hand. It could just to be non-judgmental. You know what? They're not hurting themselves. They're not in any danger. This is how they're doing it. That's okay. It wouldn't be what I would do, or maybe we think it's not what we would do, but sometimes we can't really know how we would behave in a certain situation or circumstance until we're there, right? You don't know how you're going to grieve until you're grieving. We can assume how we might behave. We can have plans for how we're going to handle everything. Sometimes we're prepared for a loss, and we think we're going to know, and then it just hits us. That person is not there anymore, and that is going to bring up all kinds of stuff for you, and you just don't know how you're going to behave. Would you want somebody judging you from the outside, saying, "Oh, they're being terrible. They shouldn't be upset. They shouldn't be angry. They shouldn't be this sad. They need to get up and go to work. They need to move on." Right? We've all probably heard them, or heard it in TV or in the news, or in books, or experienced it yourself. And that's not nice, right? And I've probably been there as well, where I've judged other people, and that's an act of learning from that, forgiving yourself and seeking forgiveness for that judgment, and being able to do differently. So I've been trying to remind people of that as well. It's like everybody does this thing differently. We all do life differently. So grief is just like any other thing we experience. Everybody parents differently. Just because it's not something you would do doesn't mean it's wrong. Just because you don't handle situations the same as other people in your lives, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. Let's see how we can support each other in grief, whenever it happens to us, instead of coming from a place of negativity and judgment. Because not only does that bring them down, if they were to catch wind of that, it brings the people around us down, and it brings us down. When we're negative, like, our emotions are negative, our actions are negative, our thoughts are negative, and we don't want to be in this constant state of negativity. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help us to lead happy, successful lives if we're constantly just negative and all the time. So, again, I'm a work in progress. I'm definitely not perfect. I have to work on this too. And, trying to refocus and, finding different ways of looking at things. So I encourage you to think differently, find other perspectives, whether it's in grief or something else. And that's what I want to leave you with today. So thank you for joining me for the Cultivating Calmness podcast, and I'll see you again next time.